I'm repeating the title, that is Leadership During Crisis, Embracing Corporate Governance, Compliance, and Risk Management Strategies. Now, our paper chair is Ms. Hope Mureira. Ms. Hope Mureira is the MD, ZEPRI. That is MD ZEPRI, that is PTA Insurance Company. She holds a Bachelor of Laws Honors degree from the Makerere University, MBA from IMD International, Lausanne, Switzerland, and an alumnus of Stanford Business School, where she majored in strategic leadership. Wonderful. If I start to say my level of education, I think it will end at the first 3 lines. But of course, having got a diploma from the Insurance Institute of Kenya, and I'm a member now, I can also have bragging rights. She has over 20 years working experience in insurance and reinsurance industry in Africa. She's a mother of 2, passionate about the girl-child education, mentorship, and empowerment of the women in the workplace. Now, she has put in place a young professionals program with a bias on girls. Wow. Through deliberate actions such as this, ZEPRI has achieved gender parity across its ranks, and currently 30% of its management team are ladies. Wonderful. She sits on the board of African Trade Insurance Agency, the Organization of Eastern and Southern Africa Insurers, Uganda Re, and Global Give Back Circle, a girl mentorship and empowerment organization. Clearly passionate about the girl child, and of course, in the process of making better girl children, then of course we'll be able to get awesome wives in future, I believe. But in greater light, of course, I want to welcome Hope. Hope is excellent, a clear definition of what we call brilliance, excellence in the field, passion, and the definition of beauty and brains defined. But before I bring in Hope, I will be able to bring in the winner from the questions. That is Bernard Allo. He responded at 11:47 a.m. So Bernard, that is your time. So if you are so many Bernard Allos, we are looking at one Bernard Allo who responded at 11:47 a.m. Kindly privately send me your Safaricom mobile number and you'll be able to receive 500 Kenya shillings airtime courtesy of Safaricom. No, so courtesy of IRA, sorry. IRA, that is our gold sponsor. Thank you so much for that. And Bernard, of course, after you receive your airtime, you can always talk to me and finish that airtime. Now, welcome on board, Hope. The floor is yours. Karibu.
Thank you, Masters of Ceremony. I will not comment on some of the things you've said about wives. We can have another chat another day. But thank you, Dr. Tundi, for a thought-provoking presentation. It is heartwarming to have an African mind challenge us on that. The CEO of IRA, Mr. Kiptum, the board and leadership of the Insurance Institute of Kenya, fellow insurance practitioners, ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to share such an incredible topic today and participate in a very, very good conference. The topic we have here is of great importance, especially under the pandemic. The topic, as read out, is leadership during a crisis, embracing corporate governance, compliance, and risk management. Dr. Martin Luther King said, the ultimate measure of a man or a woman is not where they stand in moments of comfort, but where they stand at times of challenge. And I do trust that you agree with me that these two twin issues is really what keeps most of us awake at night, especially under the current environment. Governance, you could say, is the moral compass of any organization or society for that matter. I like something I read, that if you treat risk management as a part-time job, you might be looking for one soon for yourself. As a leader, you ignore governance and risk management at your own peril, and we have many examples globally and in our own country and industry to prove this. We all know insurance companies here in Kenya over the last 2 decades that have gone under culprit, poor governance, poor risk management. Ladies and gentlemen, we are honored to have 2 distinguished panelists today to share their vast knowledge on the matter. Our first panelist is Dr. Peter Crow. Dr. Peter Crow is a company director, chairman and international advisor with an extensive record helping boards and enterprises around the world realize their potential. He has served on the boards of private and high growth companies, family farms, and social enterprises. He advises boards, institutions, and governments. He's led direct education courses and spoken and written on a wide range of governance topics. Dr. Crow has a PhD in governance and strategy. He's also a chartered member of the Institute of Directors and a member of the International Corporate Governance Network and the Global Peter Drucker Society. A big welcome to Dr. Crow. Our second panelist is a pleasure and an honor to introduce Mrs. Diana Sawe Tanui. Diana is the Corporation Secretary and Chief Manager, Legal Affairs at the Insurance Regulatory Authority. She's an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, a certified secretary and a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators. She has interest in corporate governance, regulatory affairs, compliance, and alternative resolution of disputes. Diana serves in various capacities in her professional bodies and is a member with the Global Giveback Circle and the Young Women on Boards Network. Her driving values are integrity, excellence, service, and progressiveness. She's married and a mother of 4. We welcome our panelists, and we'll start off with Dr. Peter Crow. We'll have a presentation of between 15 and 20 minutes, and will be followed by questions. Please do put in your questions online, and we'll try and answer them. Thank you. Welcome, Dr. Crow.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here. I'm calling you from New Zealand. It's the evening here. It's approximately 10 p.m. In the evening. I've been the last 3 days working on a board assessment and had a final dinner this evening. Very, very successful 3 days. So I'm looking forward to sharing some insights with you, and I hope that my comments will be helpful for you in Kenya and from wherever in the world that you're listening from. As the MC said, I was speaking for maybe about 20 minutes, and what I'm going to do now is share my screen, and then we'll get underway. So please stand by while I share my screen. Can I confirm now that you can see MC leading well during a crisis with the chair on the screen? Can you see that?
Yes, we can.
Oh, thank you very much. I just wanted to check that because last time I did a webinar, there was a difficulty with the technology. So my name is Peter Crow. Let's move quickly beyond this. But you have my background and the website is there. The situation that we find ourselves in is not dissimilar to this picture here, which was taken on the 20th of July, 1969, when Apollo 11 successfully landed the US mission, first man on the moon, with Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin. This picture, though, was the culmination of many, many years hard work when President John F. Kennedy in May 1961 mounted an audacious challenge. He said that just 3 months after the US put the first man in space, for them, we choose to go to the moon, and we choose to go to the moon this decade. They did not have the rocket. They did not have the spacesuit. They did not have anything. Man with the US had been 300 kilometers only from the Earth. And here was this challenge to go 300,000 kilometers all the way to the moon. So the challenge here, the journey from challenge to outcome was far from easy. And there were crises. Apollo 11 came after the ones before. Apollo 1, 3 astronauts tragically were part of an explosion and they lost their lives. But the team had to carry on. And that is the underlying context that I'd like to use to speak today, that this very, very serious challenge from the 35th President of the United States resulted 8 years later in this photograph being taken. And many of us remember this, maybe as small boys and girls, maybe as young adults, maybe some of us were not born yet, but this was the challenge. And we remember it because it was significant, even in the crises and the challenges and the hurdles that these men and women, 400,000 men and women, achieved this result. And meanwhile, and if we compare it with our boardrooms, because I'm speaking about crises from the perspective of corporate governance and the boardrooms, many of our contributions as company directors and company boards are about as enduring and are about as long lasting as the footprints on the sand at the beach when the tide comes in and they go away. And that is the situation that we have with many, many boards. Just this week, I've been assessing a board for its performance. And we've been reminded many, many times of this pesky little virus. In January this year, this company was going very, very well. It was performing at high levels. And in February also, and in March, there was a problem. And here we are now in November, and this virus is front and center. This virus has stood right in the way. And it was interesting to speak with some of the company directors about how they responded, about the chief executive and how he responded. And conducting this assessment over the last 2 days, here are some of the things that were shared as we went through this. The first thing that was shared was from some external people for this assessment. They said that there was overreach. That this company seemed to be more interested in running its customers' business to win revenue, even despite the crisis. Others were saying there was weak engagement and that the board did not care and staff felt aloof. They felt as if they were on their own. There were demonstrations of hubris, and of course, some in the company, as we were told this week, almost denied that COVID-19 would have any impact on their business. And these situations that I'd seen in the past few months as well with other companies. And I mention this because corporate governance and the role of the board of directors in companies is not a paint by numbers. It's a variation on some themes where the role of the board is to provide steerage, it's to provide guidance, it's to help the company perform at high levels to achieve a goal. But of course, that's very, very easy when the sun is shining and the sailing is smooth, and the difficulty comes when there are problems. And so here are some of the problems that this company, it was a large company, it was an export-oriented company, they experienced all of these problems. But I now want to move to how this company started to respond in the face of these problems. So here is the board of directors, and they're sitting here around this table, and I hope you understand. You can see here the first thing they were talking to each other about various agenda items, various things that were on their schedule, and they were running their meetings. And it was easy for them to run processes, and they felt comfortable with those processes and ticking these check boxes. And ultimately, they found themselves almost as a policeman when they were checking the performance of management in the face of crisis. They used Zoom, they used Skype, they used other ways of meeting each other because it was not possible for them to meet in person. But this company was continuing to meet one time per month. These directors and they were running these things almost as if nothing had happened because they were reliant on management to run the company along the way. And this is what happened from March until August. Accountability fell away. Staff realized that there was problems at the top. The tone at the top had not changed in the face of crisis. The staff engagement went down, the productivity went down, and as you can see, the performance of the business also went down. And if I can draw this analogy, the staff felt as if they were pulling rusty nails out of timber, and they just did not feel supported. They did not feel the structures were there. They knew that things were changing around them, but the board of directors had not changed. So here is the situation. Here is the appropriate question that boards need to be asking themselves in the context of crisis. I weigh that by way of introduction, just to show you, and many of you will have these examples where company directors are aloof, they're distant from management, and when there's a crisis, they react slowly or they react not at all. So the question that I'd like us to explore just for a few minutes today is this question: what is the appropriate role of the board in the face of a crisis? How do boards lead well? How do boards ensure that they provide the oversight, the guidance, and pilot the organization in the face of storms, crisis, and of course, the one that everybody has got on their front of their mind at the moment, COVID-19. I'd like to talk about the responsiveness that boards need to provide. And I'd like to do that in the context of the commonly understood perception of what governance is that's in the marketplace today. Many people think in terms of governance as risk. Many people think in terms of governance as rules, tick boxes. And I also hear governance in terms of strategy and law and legal matters, all of which are variations, all of which are part of the situation, but of course, they're not the whole situation. So I'd like to do this in three ways. I'd like to talk about the problem that boards face in those crisis situations. I'd like to present to you a way that they can perhaps respond to do their job better, and then of course talk about the implications for boards and for companies and for the lives of men and women that are employees of these companies during crises. This is what company directors tell me about their role when they talk about crises. They tell me that they have experts, they tell me that they have training, they tell me they have input from many, many people, and they become confused about what corporate governance is, what their role as directors is, what their role of the board is, and how they should be contributing. So like these three monkeys, they stop listening, they stop watching, and they stop speaking, and the confusion does nobody any good at all. And we know, those of us that have sat on company boards, those of us that know a little bit about governance, that the core role of the board is to make smart decisions. And of course, those smart decisions need to be in the context of what is going on around at this time. So it's no good planning for smooth sailing when there's a crisis, and it's also no good assuming there's a crisis during times of plain sailing. Here are some statistics that may surprise you. This is the first one. Only 1 in 6 directors understand the business of the business that they're currently a director of. So you can imagine that if there's 6 directors of a company or 12 directors or something like this, only 1 in 6 understands that. So that is the business of the business, the trends, the competitors, what products, what emerging things around AI and machine learning. For example, we heard from the previous speaker, 1 in 6. That's a little bit scary if we don't know what the context is and we have to make decisions, and even more so if there's a crisis. And then we add to that, then only 1 in 3 boards can reliably make decisions on really, really big, complicated problems like strategy, like acquisitions, like what to do in a crisis. And these are high quality academic research contributors, academics with extreme levels of board experience. And they're simply saying that many boards simply, and I know it's awkward, don't understand their role. And so this is a negative contribution, and it's little wonder that boards during a time of crisis become confused like those monkeys on the previous picture. Here is the role of the board. The board has to balance 2 things. The first thing is it needs to keep the company safe. It needs to understand the rules. These are the statutory requirements, GRC, but also health and safety, the banking, if it's a banking sector board, the compliance with the banking regulation, my world, agribusiness, technology. So understanding what is required, and did our company and did our management do what they said they were going to do, and did they do that within side of the law? And are they working well? And have we got the procedures and the policies and the practices in place if something goes wrong? That is, if there's a crisis. But that is not all that a board is responsible for. In common law, in the Commonwealth countries, Kenya, Nigeria, New Zealand, UK, others, the board is responsible for the performance of the company, whether it's in smooth sailing or crisis times. And this is the bit that is often neglected, because it's so much easier to ask a chief executive to report on the performance against budget, and so much difficult for the board to sit down and to look forward and to think about unknowns such as what is happening with emerging trends and what the future performance prospects of the company might be. So I'd like to move quite quickly now to talk to you about some of the challenges and responses in terms of the board and management working together to respond better, not only in crisis situations, but also generally. So here, this triangle picture talks to us about those key roles of the chief executive and the operational management within companies. They need to manage the business and make decisions and control and operate the business. And that's management, and that's easy to understand. And of course, from a board perspective, this is governance, and this is accountability to shareholders and supervising management. And of course, the piece in the middle, the overlap piece, is that strategic management. Where are we going? What is our strategy? How are we going to respond? And how are we going to ensure we perform well? Often that's to do with the performance of the company in the future. But this model applies equally in times of stress. What is the problem? How are we going to make the big decisions? How are we going to respond quickly? And are those interventions giving us the results that we need? This model, the strategic governance framework, helps us in times of crisis. At the end of the day, there are 3 things that boards can contribute that will make a difference to the performance of the company and to the company's positive response and strong leadership during times of crisis. And here are the 3 things. What those directors bring, what those directors as a board collectively do, and of course, the behaviours of those directors. And it'll be no surprise that the intersection between these is the difference between this working well and not so well. So very quickly, the capabilities, this is what the directors need all the time. They need to understand the sector, have that expertise around law and accounting and strategy and understand what those crisis possibilities might be. They need to understand the business, communicate, listen, and here is the most crucial one. They need the maturity and the wisdom not to panic in the face of crisis. They need to look at the problem. The second thing is they need to think about, have the rules, supervise closely, and provide that accountability together with the chief executive. This is straightforward when times are good, and it's very, very difficult when there's a crisis situation, because everybody either disengages or they get so close to the problem, they don't think so much about where the company is headed. These are the 5 behaviors that matter for boards if they're going to make a positive contribution in times of crisis or in times of positive plain sailing. The first is here, and you can see those words on the right-hand side. Those directors need to be able to display that capability around intelligence and cognition and have the skills to do their job. The second is they need to turn up. They need to prepare, they need to participate, and in times of crisis that might mean that the board has to meet daily or weekly. For example, they can't just be going and doing other things like their regular pattern as if nothing has happened. They need to know why they're there, and that at this time, if there's a crisis, it is still the same long-term purpose, but now it's in the context of a short-term problem. Boards need to work together. Do they show the behaviours and that ability to listen, to cooperate, to take the situation into account so that they can make decisions? And of course, in the context of those decisions is are they there for the common good? Are they prepared to hold the chief executive to account? And are they prepared to act almost like a coach for a sports team, as opposed to a policeman that when there's a problem, we're going to have some sort of punitive response, which is going to cause perhaps a negative response from management. Moving quickly and to this final section of the talk is here are some of the things that in practical terms, that type of a model can help boards understand how to perform well in times of crisis. And you can see there those words, I won't read them out at all, but if a board is engaged, that if it's clear as to who is doing what between board and management, they are acting together, not acting individually, and they're committed to working through with management, then there is a better chance of a stronger outcome. And so for that, the board and management, we see many, many best practice guidelines that say that governance management needs to be separate. More modern research, and certainly my experience, is that the board and management need to be together, not apart. That the board needs to understand what's going on, and those 3 things that I've just summarized. I'd like to bring 4 very, very practical questions that company directors and company managers consider to bring a really practical application to this talk and to bind it all together as I now finish. And the first is this: are we, as a board of directors, corporate governance perspective, watching forward for those weak signals so we can see changes very, very quickly when they're still only just starting? Or are we like Kodak, that we have it done to us? The second is in relation to the context. Do we know what our stakeholders want? In a time of crisis, do we know that our staff are happy to work from home or not? Do we know those preferences, and are we attuned and are we responding well to those? Number 3, time. are we before the crisis? Are we thinking of those scenarios and making plans and strategies as to how to handle them? But when they happen. In New Zealand, 1 decade ago, we had a series of tragic earthquakes, and there was very few planning for those in Christchurch, New Zealand. And companies went bust as a result of that. And lastly, are we putting resources aside, and are we allocating our resources so that we're good to go when there's a crisis, and that those desired outcomes we want are focused and allocated for that? And with that very, very whistle-stop tour, I'd like to leave you with this commentary here. And this is from a man that lived a long, long time ago. If we're going to change, if we're going to get our board of directors more focused on the future, if we're going to get our board of directors supporting management in times of crisis, we need them not to fight over the way it should have been done, but to exist all of their energies on building that response, on responding well, and on the future outlook and possibility. And that was my key message when I was doing this board review this week, that this particular board of directors, this particular management team was more focused on litigating the past, fighting the old, and they were less focused on building the new. And so I suspect the report they're going to receive next week might have some hard questions in them for them to consider. And with that, I'd like to stop and to thank you very much, and turn back if there are any questions at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Crow, for a very engaging presentation, powerful imagery. Yes, what footprints are we all leaving in the sand? Any questions for Dr. Crow? Please put them up in the Q&A. Any questions?
Oh, there are no questions.
Yes, we don't seem to have any questions from the audience. Thank you so much. We appreciate. I know that you have another meeting. We appreciate your time and the time difference as well. Thank you very much.
Yes, I hope that is absolutely fantastic. Thank you very, very much for the invitation. If people want to speak to me, they can find me on Google and also that website. It's now approximately 10:20 p.m. And I've got an aircraft I'm in a hotel room. I've got an aircraft to catch very early tomorrow morning. So I wish all the delegates very, very well for the conference today and tomorrow.
Yeah, thank you so much. There is one hand that's up. Monene,
oh, okay.
I think. Is that for Dr. Crow? Would you unmute if you have something for him? I did see a hand up.
Denise Munene.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you very much, and Johnny Masses. Right. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, yeah. Our next panelist is our very own Diana Sawe from IRA. Diana, you're most welcome.
Thank you very much, Paper Chair, Madam Hope. And I would also like to thank the preceding speaker, Peter, for the very insightful presentation. I take this opportunity to recognize IIK, the council and all the leadership. I also recognize the presence of the IRA board, together with the commissioner and my colleagues, for whom I'm presenting this paper on their behalf. It's a privilege to present this paper on behalf of the authority, and distinguished delegates, welcome to this presentation. So I will be following up quickly on what Peter has had a discussion on, and IIK will be putting up the presentation shortly as we proceed. But I really was interested in the wise words that Peter concluded with, that we should be working very hard to build on the change, but not to be fighting on what is new. So on my presentation, I will be looking at focusing basically on the recent changes in the law for purposes of the members to understand what changes are happening, because when the regulations change, these really impact on issues of corporate governance, compliance, and risk management strategies for insurers and professionals in the industry at large. And so as a way of introduction, we'll just look at quickly why we need to have regulation that is responsive. And we are going to look at it that corporate governance, compliance, and risk management strategies are really key planks for purposes of ensuring that regulation is effective. If the slides can move kindly. So the boards and the professionals are basically responsible for ensuring that regulation is implemented. And this will basically ensure that the company or the industry works in line with the regulations that are provided. And as I've already indicated, the requirements for companies to comply and to have appropriate risk management strategies together with an appropriate compliance structure will ensure that there is good consonance between regulations that are enacted, implemented by the regulator, as well as what the company is doing towards ensuring that the industry is performing and that the policyholders are served at best. On the next slide, we are going to see why do we need to make changes in the regulation. As an authority, basically, we are seeing that these changes are important because, first of all, we need to improve regulation to ensure that we are in tandem with international best practices. Secondly, to see that we are keeping abreast with the changes in our constitution and the laws in the land as they keep evolving. And lastly, to ensure that these regulations are aligned to evolving market dynamics. We have had a very good presentation on technology. Technology is also evolving and dynamically requires that the laws are changed to match up to the issues that are coming up in the market. And so, just as a way of a very high level summary, changes in the Insurance Act that happened in 2019 is to basically introduce matters on index-based insurance. So this was not there in the law, but then essentially what is being presented is index-based insurance will be introduced to ensure that the industry is able to give index-based insurance covers, which can be given and especially will be very helpful for purposes of agriculture insurance and issues that will use indices like weather to ensure that farmers are able to be paid in the event that the weather does not become conducive to enable them get the produce they were expecting in the first place. In the year 2019 also, the Insurance Act was amended to introduce a definition of microinsurance, which was not there before. And this has also been followed with enactment of microinsurance regulation, just to give room for establishment of microinsurance companies in the industry that will cater for needs of maybe we can talk of low income earners in the country who are not able to afford conventional insurance products and to ensure they are able to benefit from insurance products. The third point that has been brought about in the law is expanding the definition of insurance business to ensure that microinsurance is covered as an insurance business under the law, and to as well include issues of social insurance schemes, which then will allow various groups which would want to come up with schemes that will be able to give cover to the group so that the authority is able to provide a safe regulatory environment for these particular types of insurance in the society. The fourth item is about the issue of empowering the commissioner to give directions to insurance groups. Initially, insurance groups were not regulated under the Insurance Act, but looking at the risk-based supervision that the authority has embarked on, then it was thought prudent to ensure that the authority has view of what is happening in the entire group to manage the contagion risk that is coming about by the interrelationship between the insurance company and the other group at large. And therefore, in this case, the commissioner has been empowered by the law to give directions to a group, which may not necessarily be an insurance company as per the law, and also to call for information and be able to check on what is happening between the group and the insurance company. On the next slide, we are also going to proceed with seeing what other changes have happened in 2019. And the next one is to basically improve the flexibility in the law, because initially for where a policy is lost, then the policyholder was supposed to ensure that the loss is published in the Kenya Gazette before they can claim. But now the law has been amended to allow the policyholder to sign an affidavit just to indicate that the policy had been lost. And after that, they can claim for that. So that has reduced the process and improved efficiency in settlement of claims. The next change is about the issue of allowing service by use of mail and other electronic modes. Initially, service could only be done by post through a postal address that would be given by the client when they take up the policy. But now we are acknowledging that technology has changed, has evolved, and as a result, the law is now recognizing and moving in tandem with the times that communication can be done through technology. The next change that has been effected in the law is to empower the authority to settle disputes. We have a new provision where any party is unhappy with the service provided by an insurance company or any other persons licensed under the Insurance Act. They could actually come to the authority, and the authority has now the mandate to resolve that dispute and make a final and binding decision. And as a result of that, then if anyone is not happy with that decision, they can as well go to the Insurance Appeals Tribunal. On this slide, we have the last point, which is about definition of insurance fraud and offenses that are related to insurance fraud. This has been a very challenging issue for the industry, but there was no specific definition on what entails insurance fraud under the law. So the authority thought it prudent to prescribe what these offenses are and also prescribe the penalties for a person who is found liable for having contravened these provisions of the law. And therefore, this is expected to go a long way in trying to reduce insurance fraud and ensure that any malpractices are brought to book, and that the people who have participated are given the necessary measures, and it can also deter other potential criminals in the industry. The last slide on changes to the Insurance Act is the first point is that to update definition of long-term insurance business. This has been unbundled, and therefore we have very clear and increased classes of long-term insurance business, which some of them were bundled together in the previous regime. We also have the second change, which is about the issue of providing penalties for late submission of accounts and returns. Initially, these were not provided, but for purposes of enhancing compliance and ensuring that documents are given in good time for the authority to be able to effect its mandate, then therefore the penalties are prescribed, and these are compounded for any day that these returns or accounts remain outstanding, and the penalties are payable to the policyholders' compensation fund. On the third point under this slide, we have the issue of clarifying the preservation of assets in the event that an insurance company is placed under statutory management. Then the statutory manager is allowed to dispose assets if it is deemed proper for purposes of investing the money and making it give a better return in the place of if the property had been left idle and it would have deteriorated in terms of its value. The scope of the moratorium declared by the statutory manager has also been expanded. Initially, the moratorium was in favor of the company not to pay any claims that arise in the course of moratorium. But now the scope has been extended to ensure that the policyholder who has been sued for that particular claim is also covered by the moratorium. And finally, we are moving on to look at the issue of sorry, I seem to be losing my screen. And the issue of updating the trigger for settlement of claims by policyholders. And on this one, we have seen that the Policyholder Compensation Fund was initially set in place to pay claimants of a company that is wound up. But this has since been updated because we have noted that the regime in Kenya for winding up an insurance company seems to be taking longer, and that at the end of the day, policyholders may not benefit from the reason why the fund was set up. And therefore now the law is recognizing that the fund can pay in an event where the commissioner cancels the registration of an insurer, or the insurance company is placed under statutory management. So that is the new law that has come up. On the next slide, we are going to look at regulations that have been amended in the year 2019. We have the Policyholders Compensation Fund regulations, which now enable the fund to pay, as I have alluded to in my last point about when the fund comes into place. We also have insurance regulations which have been amended just to clean up and tie up with the change in the law, that now we are not talking about admitted assets and admitted liabilities, but we are talking about capital adequacy of insurance companies. We also have new regulations under the next slide, and these regulations have been enacted in the year 2020, and the first one is about bank assurance regulation. This regulation now gives the scope for regulation, registration and regulation of bank assurance agents, and gives a prescriptions on how they will be able to operate and report back to the regulator. On the issue of group-wide supervision, I had also alluded to this earlier, and this regulation gives very clear prescriptions on how the regulator will interface with groups, insurance groups, for purposes of getting information, giving directives, and even assessing the suitability of key control persons in the group. The third regulation is on the issue of microinsurance regulations. We noted earlier that the definition of microinsurance was given under the law, but now these regulations operationalize the microinsurer. In the event a microinsurer applies to the authority for registration, then they have to follow the requirements of the regulations, and the regulator will use the regulations to supervise how that particular microinsurer is operated. On the next slide, we look at the guidelines that have been amended. We have guidelines on technical provisions for life insurance, and these were issued to the market sometimes in 2017, but then having been implemented, feedback was given, and then with the review of the professionals, the actuaries, together with the industry, then this particular risk margin was reduced from 20% to 10% for purposes of calculating or valuing technical provisions for life business. On the capital adequacy guidelines, there was also an amendment to increase the interest rate margin for purposes of capital valuation from 10%, which was initially prescribed, to 18%, just to ensure that the companies are able to comply in a manner that is sustainable for the business. On the next slide, we see the new guideline which was issued, and this is just in line with the laws of the land and international requirements, that the regulator, as a supervisor of the financial services sector, gives guidance to the industry on how to combat financing of terrorism and anti-money laundering, and this is now applied by the industry to ensure that these laws are adhered to. On the next slide, we will see a guidance note that was given by the authority on how operations will be done under COVID-19 situation. This was issued in March 2020, beginning of April. And the general concept behind the guidance was to ensure that insurance companies are able to continue business operations by ensuring succession plans and doing stress tests to ensure they are able to withstand the effects of the pandemic, and just to ensure that their systems are in place to ensure continuity of business in terms of giving service to the industry, even as staff are working from home. The other aspect was also to buffer policyholders and intermediaries against the effect of COVID, where the authority requested that clients be accorded adequate opportunity or grace periods, including premium holidays, to ensure they are able to still keep their policies valid despite the challenges of the COVID-19, some of which included supporting intermediaries also, so that they are able to continue running business in this very challenging situation. On the next slide, we will see that in looking ahead, the authority is also working on various other guidelines which have since undergone stakeholder consultations, and they are in the next phase of being taken through publication, and they will be legislated in due course. And I will request the list just to be run down for purposes of information. And these are already existing, but the purpose of reintroducing or releasing them afresh is just to bring them up to speed in terms of changes in the law, changes in practice, international practice, and also the requirements on the enactment of guidance by the authority to the industry. And with that, I come to the end of my presentation, and would be happy to take any questions, interventions that may be related to this. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Diana. Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah, thank you so much for bringing us up to date with what you're doing. We can see the authority has been busy. Can you hear? Yeah, you can hear me. Yeah. So thank you so much. What the authority is doing in a bid to improve efficiency in the market, adapting to technology, servicing policyholders, and of course the elephant in the room, insurance fraud. We thank you very much, and I'm sure there's lots of questions, capital adequacy and COVID. We'll open the floor. I think there's already a few questions. So there is one question that says, regarding IRA's capacity to resolve disputes, does it mean IRA is the official arbitrator in insurance issues? And the second question that I have, so you could have both of them, kindly expound on the role of the ombudsman and whether clients can still go the legal way and go to court if they are not satisfied with the insurance tribunal's decision. Please keep pushing the questions.
Thank you very much, Chair, for that question. And just to clarify that the new provision on in the law allows the Commissioner to resolve disputes. And this is basically disputes that are touching on the service standards. If any party who feels that the service levels that are given by the licensed entity are not adequate or are contrary to the policy provisions, then they can come to the authority, and the authority should be able to listen to both parties and make a determination on that issue. This does not bar the party from taking any other legal recourse, because legal recourse is a constitutional right, and any party can approach any forum that they feel they would like to approach. But in the event that the policy provides for an arbitration, because most policies have an arbitration clause, then that matter would be referred to arbitration in accordance with the provisions of the policy. Arbitration is a different process which is regulated by an act of parliament, and it is very clear on how the arbitrator will be appointed and how the arbitration process will proceed. So no, the authority is not an arbitrator for purposes of arbitration, but this is a dispute resolution mechanism accorded within the law for the Commissioner to be able to help the parties sort out the issue without necessarily incurring expenses that may come with arbitration. And if you opt for a faster process, if one doesn't opt for litigation. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. Some more questions there. Further to the communications of March, I mean, I knew there's lots of questions to IRA. Kindly confirm if COVID is fully covered in the WIBA GPA covers. Still not clear. The other question is, thank you for the presentation, Diana. Kindly clarify on social insurance. Does it mean we shall be insuring chamas? And then, thank you for the presentation. Please clarify the role of IIK in giving interim license to insurance agents. And what is IRA doing in terms of making insurers ready to adapt to the uncertain environment, especially digitization? I think we'll just stop there for now and then answer those questions.
The questions are coming in thick and fast.
Yeah.
See my colleague, Mr. Kalai is here. I may have ambushed him, but I think it is good to also benefit from his expertise and experience, Mr. Kalai. So I will start with the questions I can answer comfortably, and then I will also invite Mr. Kalai to assist me with the other more technical questions. So on the issue of, you remember that when the commissioner started the presentation, he talked about the issue of the Bima Innovate, where the authority has come up with a Bima Lab together with a Bima Box, just to bring about innovation in the industry. And this is something that is going on, and it is one of the flagship projects for the authority to enable people who have ideas to introduce technology to the industry to come together and bring that up. But also the authority has challenged the underwriters or the industry players to adopt technology for purposes of improving on service that is delivered to clients. So in terms of what the authority has done, it is a strategic goal in our plan, and as well the issue of introducing the Bima innovation through the lab and the box. So that is something the authority is really very keen on. On the issue of social insurance, no, these are not chamas, but these are schemes in which probably groups will come together with a view to pool the risk and be able to underwrite it in a manner that subscribes to conventional insurance practices, but then within an environment that ensures that everyone is very well covered, and that the risks that are covered can be settled as and when they become due. So in case a chama has an idea which will really amount or be aligned to insurance, provision of an insurance service, then the authority can look at it and be able to advise on whether this will fall as a social insurance scheme or not. So the regulations are being worked on at the moment, but the concept has already been entrenched in the law, and I believe parties who have that idea can still come to the authority, and the authority will be able to consider and respond on applicability of that. And I will like to invite my colleague, Mr. Kalai, on the issue of IIK issuing the license to underwrite to the agents, and the issue of yes, that is the issue. Mr. Kalai, over to you. Session chair, you may advise if there's a question I've left out.
Yeah, that's okay for now. Thank you. There'll be more. There are many more coming, but we'll hear Mr. Kalai then.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's true at the moment, IIK issues what we call provisional licenses for insurance agents. And they usually do that and delegated authority from the authority. I think it's basically an operational convenience which came up when the introduction of COP, Certificate of Proficiency for Agents, when it became a requirement that any agents must have a COP before they can be licensed. There were questions of operations. If an insurance company recruits agents today and trains them, and in the process, during that time, they sell policies. Are those policies legal? Have they been sold illegal or illegally? Ideally, without a license, then the business is illegal. So that's why IIK was given that authority to provisionally, during that time when the agent is in training, within 1 year, to be able to give them a provisional license to just ensure that whatever they sell during that period is not construed to be illegal. So it just purposely for that, it's delegated authority. That's what has been happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Kalai. Over to you, Session Chair.
Thank you, Kalai. A number of other questions. What is IRA doing in terms of making insurers ready to adapt to the certain environment, especially digitization? I think you touched a bit on it, so you might want to elaborate. There is more the laws that were initiated in 2019, part of the laws that were disputed in the Senate or Parliament. If so, what will be the way forward? And what shall happen to insurers who are not fully capitalized towards the end of the year? Over to you, Diana.
Thank you, Session Chair. So I will address the issue of the laws that were affected by the High Court ruling on the Senate case. So one of the laws, the Insurance Amendment Act of 2019, was affected, and this is one of the laws that was actually making presentations. I had mentioned the issue of penalties for returns, as well as the issue of statutory management. The court, in making the decision, found that there had not been adequate consultation between the two houses, but the court was wise to indicate that that particular order had been suspended for a period of 9 months to enable the two parties confer and regularize the position before the order becomes effective. So as we speak, all the laws are in full force and effect, and that order by the court was suspended automatically for 9 months. And during that period, it is believed that the Senate and the National Assembly will have conferred, and they will agree on a position which will now make the laws effective. But for now, nothing has been affected, and the laws are applied or implemented as they were enacted. I will request Mr. Kalai to come in and address the issue of the risk-based capital and uncertainty in the times of COVID-19 pandemic. Over to you, Mr. Kalai.
I think Mr. Kalai can also answer the question of the next one that says we don't have data. How come we don't have quota insurance data for 2020? You could answer that, Mr. Kalai, as well as filing of returns. The system has been down. IRA should not penalize underwriters when this is an issue. And how is IRA planning to protect brokers to stop these direct business issues on Government of Kenya business? Thank you.
Oh, okay, thank you, Chair. I think I'll comment on those questions. On the issue of the risk-based capital, as we know, this is law which came into place 5 years ago. And we have been requiring insurance companies to comply with that law. For the last 5 years, we have actually been talking to companies, requiring the action plans towards compliance. And many companies have actually put measures in place to comply. Now, the complication came in because the implementation was due by 30th June 2020. But with the advent of COVID-19, we got many requests actually from companies saying that give us some more time because of COVID, people could not even meet to make some decisions. Monies could not be moved because of some issues of COVID. So the authority allowed an extension to the implementation of that law. That's how the Gazette notice for up to 31st December came into place. So even as we are talking today, we are actually talking to those companies who had not complied by 30th June. We are discussing with them how they are going to comply so that by 31st December, we have everybody complying. And if they do not comply, of course, there are provisions in the law and the regulations on what happens. There are processes to look at. Remember, this law applies what we call the proportionality principle. actions are taken depending on the non-compliances. So you look at every issue, and the law provides for that. If you are not compliant, we look at how serious the non-compliance is, and there are measures that will be put in place for each case, depending on their particular issues. That is how the law is applied. About the availability of data, actually, I think the person asking the question may not have gone to the website this week, because now all the data is there already. It's in the website. But the delay was again basically because of COVID-19. Because of COVID-19, several companies again could not submit their data on time. And we gave an allowance, we gave extensions for submission. They have now submitted, and the reports are actually in our website. Then I know that there is an issue of system being down, and I don't know when this is, but the issue is we will not penalize anybody if issues are from their system issues beyond the control of all of us. I don't think anybody will penalize people because of that. So, and you always discuss with each company on issues like that when they happen. I don't know whether there is another question which I have not answered. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, I think the direct business, government of Kenya.
Direct business, sorry, Chair.
It's like, how is IRA, it's an interesting question. How is IRA planning to protect brokers to stop these direct business issues on government of Kenya? Yeah.
Okay, Chair, I think that's not a very easy question, because you can't force clients on how to do or how to procure their business. Clients are free. If they want to go directly to underwriters, they are free to do that. It's their right. If they want to use intermediaries, they can do that. So it's very hard to force clients and tell everybody you must go through a broker. However, as an authority, especially for government entities, we've actually given an advisory to government entities on how procurement can be done. In fact, we've been doing training. We have trained all the counties on procurement of insurance business, so that they can understand the importance of using different parties or different entities in the process. If it's brokers, agents, we have taken them through that training to understand the role of each and every party in that process. So as an authority, we have taken that initiative of training them so that they make informed decisions as they procure their business. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We've come to the end of our session. Thank you, Diana. Thank you, Kalai. We are grateful to the authority for all they are doing, the board and management of IRA. Our industry still has a long way to go, but we do appreciate the efforts you're putting in. So thank you so much, everyone attending. I think it was a very engaging discussion, and look forward to the rest of the conversation. Thanks. Back to MC.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We sincerely appreciate